I know that time is your most valuable asset, and I want to help you maximize it when you're thinking about preparing for a race. I am now offering training systems from the 5K, 10K, 10 mile, 13.1 mile, and marathon distance on my website. You can go to runliftmompod.com, select training, and check it out. This passion project is supported in two different ways. Number one, through a partnership with Red H Nutrition. If you'll stick around to the end of the episode, you'll hear me interview the owner of Red H Nutrition about one of my favorite products. You can also use code RUNLIFTMOM for 10% at checkout off any Red H Nutrition product. Number two, it is through my efforts as a Zaya Active independent representative. If you guys want to join my new release text on Wednesdays, I want to keep you running, lifting, and momming instead of stuck to your device screen. You can just go to newreleasewednesday.com. You'll be added, and then I'll send you a text with my new release pick of the week on Wednesdays, and then also a health tip that you can use that day. That's newreleasewednesday.com. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Run Lift Mom podcast, where we're talking about running, lifting, and momming, not necessarily in that order. And for the second week in a row, I'm throwing that all out the window because, guys, I want to directly address what is happening in our world right now. Last week, I made an episode for you about something that people love about their new normal. It was a collage of gratitude, and one of the women I asked to contribute actually said, "Hey, I just tested positive for COVID-19," and she was at the time on her 11th day of quarantine. Here's why Kate Colvin made the perfect guest for this episode as a follow-up. It's not just that she's been diagnosed positive. It is also that she is a sports psychologist. That's right. Kate is a PhD in sports psychology. She also works with NATO Special Operations as a sport and performance psychologist for them. So she is the gold standard for mindset. This episode is two-part. One, we talk about what it was like for her cognitively to be diagnosed, kind of where her mind went. And then also the biggest piece of the episode, we get tactical. And regardless of your health status, we talk about some things that you can do while you're physically distancing to get through the day with some sense of control. I've also sprinkled in some of that something people love about their new normal, just to keep this episode fairly light. But what I think you're going to walk away with is an extremely tactical episode with applications that you can use regardless of whether you've been diagnosed or not from a sports psychologist who has. So without further ado, here's my friend and Dr. Kate Colvin. All right. Welcome, Dr. Kate Colvin. I know that you're like rolling your eyes when I call you Dr. Kate because you're super humble, but I'm so excited to have you here because you've got both the smarts as well as just the empathy side of what we're going to be talking about today. This episode's going to have two kind of parts. First, we're going to talk about you, and then you are going to, in your true Dr. Kate nature, help us. So let me get you to start out, Kate, by just introducing yourself. Tell us who you are.
Hi, Susie. It's so great to be with you here today. It's been so long since we've caught up, so I'm great to have this opportunity to not just chat with you, but also support your community and your followers. A brief background about me. I am a sport and performance psychologist, and I got into this field in a little bit different of a way than many. I was an athlete growing up, and sport was not just what I did, but it was who I was completely. I'd always assumed that I wanted to be a doctor in one way, shape, or form, but I had always tied that with the idea of medicine. And so I was pre-med until I took an intro to sports psychology class, and I absolutely fell in love. And that really challenged my beliefs and my idea of who I wanted to be. So I did take 2 years off, and I was a fitness director at a gym in Seattle. During that time, I taught fitness classes and I also personal trained. And while I was working with my clientele, I realized how huge of a component psychology is to meeting your goals and being healthy and happy as a whole. During that time, I was also competing in triathlons, and I realized how much that mindset, that idea of psychology played into my own competition and my own performance. So being who I am, I shot an email back to the professor who I took an intro to sports psychology class with, asked if he was accepting doctoral students. That was in November, and in January, I started class. So I started my graduate studies in sports psychology. I had assumed that I wanted to work with professional athletes or high-performing athletes until I was exposed to the human performance programs that the military currently has by a keynote speaker at a conference that I attended. And the rest is history. So I spent about a decade working with the military, specifically special operations. And my first job was in North Carolina, where I met you, Susie.
Yes.
CrossFit. So I've continued my work with the military, and currently I actually work at NATO Special Operations Headquarters in Belgium, which is where I am right now.
Wow. I will tell you, Kate, one of the things that I remember very vividly, and I've been doing CrossFit for a minute, but you're the first coach that I've ever had that would ask us going into a workout to set an intention and a goal and even a mantra, if you will. Guys, Kate would have us write down our powerful mantra in chalk on the ground so we could see it if we were faltering in our minds. And then also you're the first coach, and of course, sports psychologist, but you're the first coach that after the workout was over, Kate would get down on a knee coach style and be like, how do you think that went? And really dip into that. And that really, just as an athlete, made such an impact on me because I was so used to walking in the gym, going through the movements, calling it a day without realizing each workout was a learning opportunity. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy you're receptive of it. Luckily, we had a really great group at the gym. Not everybody likes my quote unquote hippy dippy voodoo stuff.
Hippy dippy voodoo stuff. It is welcome here. Wonderful. Well, as you know, Kate, this episode of Run Lift Mom, typically I record things that are evergreen, meaning, it would be as applicable today as it is a couple years from now. This episode, girlfriend, I don't know. I'm doing things a little bit differently right now because right now it's not normal times. We are, of course, currently, there's a world pandemic with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and you've got a very personal connection and story to share about that.
I do, yeah. I am actually quarantined at home, and I am on day 11 after being diagnosed with COVID-19. So yeah, I'm here. I'm hanging out. Home.
So when I reached out to you about doing a segment for the episode that, depending on when somebody is listening to this, they can dip back into the episodes. And the episode prior, I had asked you just to say a minute of, hey, what's something you love about your new normal? And Kate shoots right back at me with, well, funny enough, I just tested positive for COVID-19. And so that's how this episode was born. You said you're on day 11 of a quarantine. I would love for you to give us some insight to emotionally, what does that look like when you're like, okay, I'm positive and now I've got time and space alone so that I don't infect others. What in the world is going through your mind right now?
Yeah, well, you asked me when we first were chatting about me being on the podcast and talking about this, if I was surprised when I found out, or my initial reactions were emotionally to being diagnosed with COVID-19. And to be honest, I really wasn't surprised. As horrible as that sounds, with my job, I travel quite a bit. I support 29 different nations within the Alliance, so I'm back and forth on planes all the time. Obviously, we're very well aware of health guidelines that are being put out. So this pandemic, if you will, is something I was aware of months ago when I was still being required to travel for work. I also chose to travel personally. And then in addition, I am immune impaired. I have a couple of different disorders that cause my immune system just to not be as rock solid as everybody else's. And then I did also have a surgery within the week that I was diagnosed as well. Emotionally, when I first found out, where I work, I obviously am exposed to a lot of different people that work within our headquarters, representative from all the nations, and then go home to their families, all of different ages, usually a little bit older in this community because they are higher ranking military personnel. So I was actually more concerned with those that I might have exposed that were older in age or might have also been immune impaired. And so instantly I started racking my mind with who I needed to inform, who I needed to start following up with to make sure that they were aware so that they could pay attention to the symptoms, if you will, if they were to see any of those as well.
Right.
Yeah. So that was probably the toughest part for me, was knowing that I could have caused harm to others. My entire career and what I've done my entire life is to help, not harm. So that was probably the biggest emotional impact for me, for sure. As far as the idea of social distancing and being home, being in quarantine, I joke that I'm an extroverted introvert. So I can switch on with you all. I can coach. I can work with my clientele. But when I come home, I actually enjoy being able to switch off, to be alone, to have that quiet time. But I didn't realize how much this ongoing quiet time would affect me. So I have had a little bit of an issue, if you will, with my inability to support my community like I did. So my clientele, I would see them every single day. And just like you said, I checked in with you. I got down on one knee at the end of your workout. I'm popping into people's offices, checking in on them. And so the social distancing has really prevented me from being able to support those who might not need me, but who I want to help and give back to. And that fills my tank. So as far as just kind of like feeling good and enjoying life day to day, that's one thing I'm absolutely missing for sure.
It's interesting, we've in our household, we've started using the term physical distancing because it sounds a little less like isolation, but you remind me that it is a social distancing thing as well. And I like that you point out that, wow, a blessing of this is realizing how much it fills your cup to physically be there for somebody and be social like that, even as a self-described introvert.
Right? Yeah. And then also emotionally, I'm always the one that is helping others, right? I'm not the one being helped ever. So it's been humbling for sure to have people have to deliver groceries to my house and check in on me and go fill my prescriptions for me and really take care of things. I'm not used to depending on others, but in that sense, I guess it's really provided me with a perspective to be more empathetic for those I'm supporting that also might not be as willing to accept help initially. So I think that at the end of the day, it's all a learning experience, and I'm trying to focus on the aspects that are going to make me stronger and help me better support people once this crazy quarantine and the social or physical distancing is over. But I do believe we all need to follow the guidelines and the standards as much as possible to a T to really prevent this from continuing to spread.
Absolutely. All right. So I can't have a sports psychologist on this show and not ask you to give us some tactical tips for this quarantine, physical distancing, social distancing, whatever we're calling this really weird time that we're all in, regardless of health status, right? There are some things going on in between our ears that we can control. And so you have curated a very specific list for us. You've got 5 tips for us, and we're going to go into that. So can you first talk to me a little bit about just the importance of a daily routine?
Absolutely. So developing a daily routine is probably the most important thing that we can do to achieve our high performance goals. So not just in this time, where we're all struggling and experiencing chaos that we're not typically used to. But just in general, having a routine, following it is incredible. We are creatures of habit, and our brains respond very well to specific attentional targets. So those are those words, Susie, that I would have you draw and chalk on the ground. Those are those attentional targets to direct your brain to the right thing at the right time. Perhaps the greatest sense of control that we can cultivate for ourselves is in that daily routine, in those attentional targets. And what they do is they serve as an anchor for us. So to despite what's going on in the world around us, we can find comfort in knowing what time we're going to eat, what time we're going to work out, when we're going to sleep, when we're going to video chat with our friends throughout the day, when we have our weekly therapy, which I do, and then coping with the times of unpredictability. They just feel more doable when we have that structure because it does give us a sense of control. And right now, I think that's what we're all lacking, right? Is when is this going to end? How can I control this? What can I do? And then also with our routine, don't forget to add some fun into your day, right?
I love that. Do you think maybe, we could schedule that in, right?
100%. Yeah. So for me, being able to be outdoors, it's odd. Of course, when we're quarantined, it's the nicest weather we've ever had in Belgium all year long, right? So I've been getting out and trying to spend time on my garden, planting flowers, just doing yard work. And so I worked in just an hour a day to be outside, whether it's laying in my hammock and reading or just playing fetch with my dogs. But that's something that just kind of fills my tank up a little bit. So I try to work that in each day.
I love that. Moms that are listening to this show, we know that our children really thrive on that routine, on knowing what's happening throughout the day. So anybody listening with an infant or a toddler, you've been there, but it's been for somebody else. So I would ask you to listen to Kate's advice, but flip it to you and just know that that is something that you can control for your mental well-being as well.
Absolutely. And then also, as you guys are engaging in those daily routines and habits, you're also modeling that for your children, right?
Yes.
So new routines that you're participating in with them during this time, which gives them some peace and comfort, some control. They know what to expect. And so things are just less chaotic when we know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What else do you have for us? What can we do right now, regardless of our health status, to make sure that we are staying well?
Yeah, moving daily. So whatever that means to you. So exercise improves our mental health by reducing anxiety, depression, negative mood, and it also improves our self-esteem as well as our cognitive function. Research also shows that exercise can alleviate symptoms like social withdrawal, which a lot of us are experiencing during this time. So I think that's something that is just so powerful. A study in New Mexico Highland University found that the force from our footsteps alone can increase the supply of blood to our brain. Research at Stanford have found that individuals test better on measures of creative thinking, both during and after walks. So think about your kids, right? Learning as you guys are homeschooling, go for a walk, and then maybe engage in some of that coursework. And then finally, Duke University identifies that walking can be an effective treatment for some patients with depression. So while we might not have access to a gym at this time, we do have access to our feet. So at the very least, we can take a walk. In addition, there are so many online resources. I've seen a lot of friends, fitness instructors that are offering, hey, even if you can't pay, donate. Pay what you can. We want to help you stay fit, stay healthy, stay happy during this time. So there's a lot out there that you can leverage to get your well-being on.
Absolutely. There has never been a better time to test virtual resources for fitness. You guys, some of the best fitness instructors in the world are offering their services for free right now. And so hearing all of that research, Kate, it's mind-boggling to me why someone wouldn't want to take advantage. Something that I'm curious your take on this. There's a lot, to the point where it's almost a little bit of decision anxiety. Would you recommend somebody try 2 or 3 things, decide which one they like the best, and then stay consistent with that?
Well, there's a lot of different free trials if you did want to decide and kind of try a few things out. But there is something called cognitive overload. So we already have so much going on, and it's a very chaotic world. Everything around us has changed. So when we put too much on our plate, we can get that sense of cognitive overload or sensory overload. And so we almost get what we call paralysis by analysis. Where do I go? What do I do? So maybe I would recommend starting by just dipping your toes in the water in one aspect you know is going to work. So for me, since I am sick, specifically having respiratory issues, I can't go out and run. I can't do anything that really gets my heart rate up as well as I would like to. So one thing that I have been able to do is yoga. So I've actually worked in yin yoga into my daily routine every single day. And so it's a sense of movement. I am getting that blood flow going. And then I also just feel better about myself at the end of the day. And then once I work that into my routine, it becomes my new normal, if you will. Then we can add more on. But I think starting by doing too much too soon, again, can be overwhelming and prevent people from engaging in anything at all.
Hi, Susie. It's Nina from Greensboro, North Carolina. You know, what I'm really loving right now is this home gym that my husband decided to build about 12 hours after the YMCA was closed. And we were blessed and had some tax money. And before you know it, there's a garage gym at my house. And it has been such a blessing. We are often all three out there, my husband and my son Noah, who's 8. And, maybe working out or we're playing or whatever it is that we're doing. But it's just so fun to be out there and be active together. I think of you often with your garage gym. And that's been a really big blessing during this crazy time.
Hi, my name is Christine Tager. I'm from Chino Hills, California. And something that I am so grateful for in our new normal is the stopping of the rat race. What does that mean? I feel like we were seriously stuck in this vicious cycle of rush. Every day it was school, lessons, practice, games, school, lessons, practice, games. I feel like my husband and I would sometimes high five on the way out the door to the next event. I am not proud of it, but I was the one that would order Uber Eats to the field for dinner. And I'm happy to say that our new normal is me cooking again. We're eating dinner together as a family again. And that's just one small piece of the puzzle. It has slowed us and it has stopped the rat race.
All right, Kate, so talk to me about the concept of proactive versus reactive thoughts.
I'm so glad you asked me to talk about that. This is probably one of my favorite topics. Our environment really does prime us to be reactive to the stimuli, to the news, to everything that's coming at us each and every day. And the problem is that if we don't control that stimuli in our environment, it will inevitably control us. So with the abundant amount of news, information, and resources being posted not just daily, but seemingly by the minute, specifically about COVID-19, it's easy for one to lose themselves in that chaos and in all of the unknown that currently exists. We can gain control by limiting those inputs. So I'd recommend turning off unnecessary news notifications, maybe even limit how many times you do read the news or watch the news in a day. Unfollow people or accounts on social media that are increasing your stress or anxiety levels. And then finally, I'd recommend that you only equip yourself with information from trusted sources. There's a lot out there that's being thrown around, and not all of it is necessarily true. So you get to choose where you dwell your attention. Choose wisely, just like those words on the floor. One way that I would recommend being proactive with your thoughts and with your mindset, which really does kind of tie in to that first point we talked about by developing a daily routine, is developing what I call a morning mindset and then also an evening reflection. So I'd really love to walk you through just 5 steps on each one that can help set your day up for success and your thoughts, as well as tie a bow on them at the end of the day, if that's all right.
I love it. So let's start with morning mindset.
Yes. So morning mindset, 5 things. So I recommend doing this by journaling. So finding a quiet space, I like to grab a cup of coffee. I sit in my favorite chair and I grab my journal. And I just actually go through these 5 things every single morning to make sure that I'm set up for success mentally and cognitively. So the first one I'd recommend taking time to think about is, what is one thing that you can get excited about today? So I think that's really important at this time because there is a lot of negativity. And there's something that exists called the negativity bias. So we are prone to seek out the bad in our environment as opposed to the good. And then when a pandemic such as this happens, that's going to drive us even more to notice all of those negative and ineffective things within our day, within our world. So what can you get excited about today? Decide what that's going to be as soon as you get out of bed. The second one I'd recommend thinking about in journaling is, if one word could describe the kind of person you want to be today, what would that word be and why? So who do you want to be? You get to decide, right? And then that word, that's your attentional cue. That's what's going to remind you to stay tied to that throughout the day. Third point that I would make is identifying situations that might create stress or steer you away from your goal, what you decided you wanted that day. There are a lot of curveballs that get thrown at us, but we are creatures of habit. So those curveballs tend to repeat themselves. So we can, for the most part, predict some of them. And then in addition to that, we need to identify how we're going to navigate that. So when those curveballs come at us, we're not necessarily going to know how to bat at them best if we haven't already developed a plan. But if we have that plan of action, if we know what our form and our technique is, if you will, then we're going to be able to mitigate that challenge much more efficiently. So always have a plan in place. So those proactive thoughts. The fourth one is I would know that today was a great success, but at the end of the day, I accomplished or felt these things. And so again, we're being able to point our thoughts to, what do we want to do? What do we need to accomplish? How do we want to feel throughout the day? And then we can hold ourselves accountable to that throughout the day. And then finally, the fifth one is, what is your message to yourself today? So self-talk, right? What we say to ourselves absolutely matters. In fact, self-talk is one form of confidence, of building self-efficacy, that belief in yourself to accomplish a task or goal, whatever you decide you want to do. So what is going to be that message? What are you going to write on that floor in chalk for the day?
I love it. Okay, so as you've gone through this, Kate, I filled it out. Can I share it with you?
Please do.
Okay.
I was wondering what you were doing.
Yeah. So I went ahead and filled out what would be my morning notes. And what you're recommending again is that someone do this first things first. So today we're focused on sharing. So as an example of that, I'm loaning some gym equipment out that we have in our garage to some neighbors that don't have access. But sharing is actually something that our family is focused on this week. Can I have the same one tomorrow? Is that okay? Is that in the rules?
That is in the rules, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. And my trigger word or thought is light. I want to show up as light. Recording this podcast is an example of it. I'm also editing a show that I hope can serve as a light for folks. And so I'm hoping that my daily actions will just serve as a light for others.
Yeah.
All right. So the thing that I have thought about, so the barrier, it's my triplets. My triplets can be a barrier when I'm trying to get my son through his kindergarten schoolwork. And so as I'm thinking about how this looks, I've got a backup in-house that can help the triplets if they're not feeling whatever school activity we're doing. So I have that plan B if their attention span is not focused during our school time.
That's perfect. Yep. It's course action A, B, C, D, all of them, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to say, and you're going to have to tell me if this is right or wrong. Today, I'm going to feel accomplished if everybody stayed alive and got fed and made it through the day. Is that lowballing it too much?
Absolutely not. No, not even a little bit. Because if that is success to you, then that's success to you. All of us have different lives, different demands, different goals. And so whatever works for you, works for you. And as little or as big as it may be, identify what it is, because that's going to help you feel better at the end of the day. Right.
All right. So if we're alive and well at the end of the day, that's a check. And then finally, I wrote down for number 5 the same thing I used to write in the chalk on the ground back in our CrossFit days, and that is give more. Give more is my favorite mantra, and I feel like it applies to anything, especially right now, some of the challenges that I have as a homeschooling mother.
Yeah. Goodness, baby C's not baby C anymore. How's he in kindergarten?
I know. How did that happen?
I know. And I remember the overnight stay with the triplets in the hospital. I feel like it's and they've grown up.
It's full circle. All right. I want you to walk us through what this might look like in the evening. Now, I'm not going to make you coach me through it, but I did want to bring to light what this might look like for somebody. An audience listening, I hope that you're able to listen to Kate walk us through what the evening notes will look like now, and then translate it to your plan for your next day.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear how your evening reflection goes tonight, Susie. So first, I would recommend starting with one moment that you appreciated during the day. So we know gratitude is an incredibly important aspect of positive emotion. So being able to identify what you appreciated, again, we're prone to that negativity bias. So this allows us to intentionally direct our focus to the good, to the positive in our environment. The second thing I'd recommend is, and it kind of goes along with those obstacles, those barriers. So a situation or task that you handled well today was, and then how you handled it well. Again, with that negativity bias, we are very, very prone to look at what we need to do better. But I think that more often than not, especially at an elite level of performance, and Susie, you're an incredible mom, you're an incredible athlete. So I would venture to guess that you're doing a heck of a lot more right than you are wrong. And so I think it's important to direct our focus to that as well. So not only what was that situation, that task, that barrier that you were able to overcome, but how did you overcome it? So if we identify what we did well, then we know how to repeat that behavior. The third thing I'd recommend is identifying something that you learned or you realized today. There's so much that we're exposed to throughout the day. And a lot of the times we don't even allow ourselves to be aware of that. So being able to take time and just sit in it and be still for a moment really allows us to see what we're doing to help build ourselves so we can better be there for others as well. Number 4, if I could have made today better if I ... So whatever you could have done, if it was reacting to a certain situation, if you could have pushed a little bit harder on that run, if you could have made sure that your diet was a little bit more on point, what could you have done better? And that helps hold us accountable for the next day as well, so we don't repeat behavior that's working for us or against us, rather than for us. And finally, the 5th one is something that you could have done to help you feel more connected to others throughout the day. And that one is so important at this time. So for me, one thing that I worked into my daily routine, and we talked a lot about, that I do live alone. I have 3 pups, 2 dog turds, and a son, I don't completely feel alone. But one thing that I've worked in, and I was actually debating when you asked me one thing I love about my new normal, I was debating between 2. So whether it was being able to learn how to support my clientele on a virtual platform, or the fact that I actually have time and I've made it a point to connect with my friends and family that I haven't been able to. So with the time difference, being here in Belgium, that's been a barrier, but I have been able to have a more flexible schedule. So I've been able to video chat with those friends and connect each and every day. So what can you do to feel more connected, or what did you do to feel connected throughout the day?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love that. I'm going to make some graphics out of these, if that's okay with you, Dr. Kate. That way people can save those graphics in their phone or wherever and be able to reference both that morning and evening. And as I understand, it's kind of a cyclical thing. If you do both, the morning will feed the evening will feed the morning, and so on.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wonderful.
That's absolutely right.
Wonderful. Okay, walk us through a couple of other things that we can do right now just to, again, stay well holistically.
Yeah. So the 5th point in the evening reflection, talking about that idea of connection, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I cannot stress enough how much remaining connected means to us and how important it is and how huge of an impact it can have on us during this time. So during times of stress, we thrive more effectively in the company of others and with a sense of support. So try to stay in touch as much with your friends and your family. So if you're in a situation like me where they're not at your disposal, how are you going to stay connected? Be purposeful within that. Maybe you do have 4 kids at home and your husband, but maybe you need to be connected somewhere outside of that, with your neighbors, with, church family as well. So we're lucky enough to have access to technology that will enable you to do just that. If you don't have friends or family to connect with, which might be an issue for many, I do want to point out there are tons of resources to leverage. So there are helplines right now. They currently exist for this very issue. And then there's also so many online support systems. One of my favorite ones is actually BetterHelp. It's an incredible online therapy platform. That's actually what I use once a week.
Awesome. Awesome.
Practice what you preach, right?
Yes, absolutely. You know it. Wonderful. I love that. All right. And then talk to us a little bit about just our sleep hygiene. How does this help our mental capacity and kind of that mindset?
Absolutely. So many of us, since we now have greater control over our schedules, I'm going to make a huge note of this and underline it, if you will, in your notes. You do not have an excuse not to get the proper amount of sleep now. You do not have an excuse not to get the proper amount of sleep right now. We tend to cut our sleep short so often, and sleep is such a critical component of not just your physical, but your mental well-being as well. So during our deep sleep cycle, that is when our body tissue heals itself. The growth hormone is released, if you will. So those micro tears in your muscles that we get from working out, those are healed. That's how you get your gains in the gym, right? Is during that deep sleep cycle. But during our REM sleep, that's when we restore our brains. That's when we're able to really process and heal those emotions. So when we cut our sleep short, what we do is we actually also cut that growth hormone secretion and that ability to process those emotions short. And so we do become a lot more short fused. We have a shorter temper, if you will. We become a little bit more emotionally reactive to various situations. And so perhaps the greatest tool for controlling our stress and anxiety right now is sleep. So just as you would create and follow a daily routine, I also recommend, and this comes from so many sleep scientists. I do work very closely with the sleep scientists at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, and they have identified that sleep routine is so important because it helps give our brain those specific attentional targets. And it's kind of like a domino effect. You start that sleep routine, and then your brain's like, oh, I'm winding down, right? I'm going to get ready to go to sleep. So one thing that I'd recommend working into that is going to bed and waking up at the same time every day. So that's so valuable for our mental health. And then also that remember the recommendation for the average adult is 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And then your kiddos are going to need more than that.
Mm-hmm. I love this. So a theme to this episode is there are things that you can control and there are things that you cannot control. And so guys, we have heightened emotions right now. There are a lot of things that we can't control. Hear Kate when she says getting the proper amount of sleep will help you in your ability to control those things. And spoiler alert, you can control the rest that you get right now.
Absolutely. You absolutely can. And I think people will, a lot of your listeners, I would say, think about a time where you haven't got great sleep. So whether you had a newborn, whether you had work demands that cause you to stay up for 24 hours at a time, think to that time. And I'm sure that you're going to notice that you were a lot more emotionally reactive. So whether it was anger, whether it was just something hit you a lot harder than it should have, that is all because we're not getting the proper amount of time of sleep. And then also your quality of sleep is going to be pretty important as well. So ensuring that your environment is set up for success in order to have effective sleep, which would be a whole nother podcast in itself.
Right. Well, maybe we will get you on sometime. Kate, I want to wrap this up with some rapid fire quarantine style. These are going to be related to our physical and social distancing right now. Are you ready?
I think so.
All right. So this is this or that. Do you prefer Netflix or Hulu?
I have to say Netflix because Hulu we can't watch in Europe.
Oh, well.
I have to say Netflix. That's all I got.
Netflix by default. All right. What is your...
But can I do a caveat?
Oh, of course.
I'm doing Tuesdays and Thursdays TV free. So I'm asking myself to read books on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
I love it.
Yeah, I've noticed I spent a lot more time in front of the telly, and I don't necessarily want to.
That is a really great suggestion for anybody at this point in time. If you find yourself consuming more TV than you would like, you guys just make some self-imposed rules there.
Love it.
Adding value everywhere you go, and I love it. Tell me, Kate, your favorite non-perishable food.
Oh, goodness. I love the sweet and spicy tuna packet.
Ooh, yes.
I just eat it literally straight out of the packet. Love it.
I know what you're talking about because we have some. And yes, great low carbohydrate, high protein, and delicious.
It is.
Wonderful. All right. If you've got like 20 minutes just to burn in your living room, moving, like your suggestion number 2, in your tips, what would you do?
Well, I actually turned an entire room of my house into a yoga studio. So I would walk myself up to my 3rd floor from my living room, and then I've been doing some yin and restorative yoga. So that's been where I've really focused my movement patterns as of lately. But I will be starting some good training. My TRX band just came in the mail, so I'll be hanging that outside, and I'll be doing some workouts outside coming soon too, as soon as I feel better.
I love that. Well, Kate, thank you so much for coming on this show. First of all, for sharing your personal journey, which we will be praying for you to heal and get well and continue to help others. Thank you for bringing your expertise. You are the gold standard for mindset. And so I've been talking about having you on this show for a long time. You're one of my chicken list guests. I don't love these circumstances, but I'm so glad that you brought your expertise here.
It was a pleasure to be on and be able to chat with you and everybody else listening. And then, if you ever need me in the future, please reach out.
You got it, girl.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate Colvin, aka Dr. Kate, for coming and chatting with us. One, about opening up with your own experience being diagnosed with COVID-19, but then also going into the psychology of how we can take some control regardless of our health status. You guys, I've got a ton of great resources for you in the show notes of this episode. Depending on where you're listening, you're either going to swipe up or click on details. Thank you so much, Kate, for offering us those extras as well. And until I get into your earpiece again, remember, for while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. That's from 1 Timothy 4:8, and this has been the Run Lift Mom podcast.
Hey Susie, this is Angie Bradley. You can find me on Instagram at myzia, that's MYZYIA. I have to say, coronavirus has gifted me this wonderful thing that I have been so short on, which is time, right? I feel like as a family of 7, we're so busy all the time. We don't necessarily always sit down together and have time to do all these activities that I know I've always wanted to do or I've always envisioned doing with my children. And this coronavirus whole thing has given me that time. I feel like now I have an abundance of time, right? We're cooking together, baking bread, learning together how to do that. We're taking time to use our imaginations and our creativity by building things out of Legos. We're going on walks, enjoying the weather outside together, playing games together. And for once, I'm able to sit down and read a book with a cup of coffee as opposed to, listening to it on Audible as I'm driving hither and thither all over God's green earth. So yes, this has been such a blessing. I love the time I've got to spend with my children, and getting that time back and prioritizing, I hope continues well past this big coronavirus.
All right, I've got Katie Danger with Red H Nutrition. Katie, we know that good health starts in the gut. Can you tell me a little bit about adaptogenic symbiotic?
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate your point, Susie. Health starts in the gut, and that's why the adaptogenic symbiotic is so important. It's complete digestion support. We've got the 3 most abundant gut flora for the probiotics. So we've got 6 billion CFUs, colony-forming units. We have a prebiotic fiber, which helps feed those probiotics so they can do the job they need to do. And then we also have invertase included, which helps with any bloating and gas and indigestion you may be experiencing. So we've got this proactive approach and we've got the reactive approach. So if anybody's experiencing any gas, bloating, or just wants additional digestive support, the adaptogenic probiotic is the all-in-one solution for that.
Hey, Run Lift Mom listeners, you know I'm the mom of 4 kids under age 5, and therefore I am always looking for ways to work smart, not hard. Anchor is the smartest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you why. First of all, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, but Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so then it can be heard on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole lot more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It is quite literally everything you need all in one place. And y'all, it's free. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Run Lift Mom office hours are in session. From now until May, I am opening up my private group. This group is typically for members who have paid for Run Lift Mom flexible training. I'm opening it up to everyone because I'm going to be holding office hours at 8:00 p.m. on Thursdays. On a weekly basis, it's going to be 30 minutes long. You can submit your questions beforehand or join me there, and I'm going to answer your questions about canceled races, what to do with your fitness if you don't have access to a gym, or just general running questions. If it is in my bandwidth as a running coach and master's level educated health promotions professional, I will absolutely answer them. If it is out of my bandwidth, I'm going to find an answer for you and then get back to you the following week. So this is an open style office hours. Please go to activeopportunity.com. You'll get access to that private Facebook group. Again, it's activeopportunity.com. I hope I see you there this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to the Run Lift Mom podcast. This began as a passion project in February 2019, and now, you guys, it is legit my favorite thing to do each week. Record with the guests that come on Run Lift Mom, and then share their knowledge and expertise with you. I love this. I have done a lot of things right with this show. The thing that I've done wrong, I haven't asked you to rate, review, and subscribe enough. You guys, this is how other people find the show. So please do me a solid, rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you for being a listener of Run Lift Mom.